If you ask locals near Holcombe Moor about Ellen Strange, they'll likely tell you one of two stories. One speaks of a young wife killed by her husband on a bitter winter's night, but the other whispers of a woman struck down in a deal with the devil. But who was Ellen Strange, and why has her story haunted these moors for over 250 years? On a lonely stretch of Lancashire moorland lies a memorial cairn, a pile of stones that holds a chilling legacy. It marks the murder of Ellen Strange, a woman whose life ended tragically in 1761. This episode explores her tale, a story of hardship, betrayal, and a death that left echoes in local folklore. Even after centuries, Ellen Strange's name still lingers on the lips of locals. If you ask them today, they'd offer two versions of her story. One, rooted in dark folklore, claims she met her end at the hands of a devilish figure, a man so wicked that his wooden clogs sparked fire as he fled the scene. The other, a quieter version, tells of her husband's rage and a wife's tragic fate, a tale no less haunting. Both stories, passed down through generations, reflect the fears and the truths of those who lived here. Before her name became legend, Ellen was an unremarkable young woman. Born into a farming community in 18th century Lancashire, life in such a remote place was hard, and opportunities for women like Ellen were few, and eventually she got married to John Broadley, and the couple left their rural roots behind to seek a better life. They moved to a small town called Clayton-le-Moors, where they applied for poor relief, which was a system that was meant to support the desperate and destitute at the time. But poor relief wasn't a charity, and it was funded by local taxpayers and communities, and they were really strict about who they supported. Ellen and John, both of working age, were denied the help from the poor relief. Labelled unsuitable, they were evicted from the parish. Thrown out and unwanted, the couple relocated to Huncote, another small village. Life just didn't improve for them. Ellen and John probably started to feel quite trapped and unwanted wherever they went, and they were struggling to make ends meet in just an unforgiving world. Their difficulties might have started to sow seeds of resentment and despair between them. So on the 26th of January in 1761, Ellen Broadley, as she was known after getting married, attended a fair in Haslingden with her husband John. The couple had been seen together in local alehouses that day, and some people say a quarrel had erupted between them that night. Later on that cold, bitter January night, Ellen left her husband John in the pub after what many believe was a heated argument that had occurred. The cold air bit through her thin shawls as she walked the familiar paths of Holcombe Moor, heading to the sanctuary of her family over at Stake Farm in Hawkshire, where she grew up. Now, growing up in these wild and untamed lands, Ellen knew every twist and turn of the moor. The moon bathed the whole area in an eerie silver light, illuminating her pathway across it. But this night was different. Was she replaying the fight in her mind as she walked, or had she made up her mind to finally leave her husband for good? The truth is, we'll never really know what Ellen was thinking as she made her way across the moor to the safety of her childhood home. This is where Ellen's story splits into two tales. One of these has been passed down through generations. Local legend tells of an illicit meeting under the cover of darkness. Some say Ellen had arranged to meet a mysterious man out on the moor, a travelling salesman or a stranger who had caught her eye. Perhaps she sought some escape, some companionship, or simply a break from her troubled marriage. But the meeting turned sinister. According to the local legend, the man, overcome by desire or rage, lost control and brutally attacked Ellen up on the moor, leaving her body there lifeless. She was later discovered, beaten and concealed beneath some stones. But this dark tale was immortalised in a poem by John Fawcett Skelton, who was a local poet, and he retold the events as he'd heard them passed down, and it turned into a cautionary tale, warning young women of the perils of secret liaisons with strangers out in the wilderness. Was this tale just an effort to instill fear to keep local girls from trusting handsome travellers, or was it just merely a way that local people used to explain a mysterious tragedy? Many years after Ellen's death, local historians uncovered records from the actual coroner's inquest, and these records revealed the brutal and violent nature of Ellen's final moments. Her body bore the unmistakable signs of violence, and the coroner recorded that Ellen had been struck, kicked, strangled and squeezed, and it was clear that this was no accident, it was a deliberate act of murder. Now, in the record, suspicion quickly fell on her husband John, and he was arrested and actually faced trial at the Lancashire Assizes. Now, the isolated location of the crime worked actually in her husband's favour. The remoteness of the moor made it difficult for them to gather conclusive or reliable witnesses, and with no direct proof tying her husband to the crime, the jury had no choice but to acquit John of the charges. Yet, justice may have found its own way, because when you look through the historical records, they show that John Broadley himself died within a year of Ellen's murder. Now, was it the weight of the guilt, or was it the wrath of a superstitious community that followed him? The truth remains as murky as the moor's misty nights. Today, Ellen's Cairn stands not just as a marker of tragedy, but as a symbol of resilience and remembrance. Visitors continue to leave stones on the pile, honouring a young woman whose life was cut short in an act of violence over 2 centuries ago. And in recent decades, Ellen's death has taken on a new meaning. For many, her story now represents the plight of domestic violence victims, those who are still suffering, and their suffering often goes unseen and unspoken. In 1978, a ceremony was held at the Cairn where lots of women gathered to reclaim Ellen's story as a call for awareness and change, but this act of remembrance was not without controversy. Some locals viewed it as an intrusion, a modern reinterpretation of an old tale that could have been better left in the past. Yet for others, the ceremony reaffirmed the importance of telling Ellen's story, a chilling reminder of how love can turn into betrayal and how silence can conceal the darkest of deeds. And although centuries have passed, Ellen's story still remains etched in this moorland and in the stones at her grave. It is the story of hardship, violence, and the enduring human need to remember. Was Ellen Strange the victim of her husband's jealousy, a stranger's uncontrolled rage, or was it something even darker? The Moors keep their secrets well, and Ellen carried the truth of that night to her grave. The story remains a haunting symbol of love, loss and betrayal, perhaps a chilling mystery that still lingers in this little corner of Lancashire. What do you think happened on that fateful night? Was it a crime of passion, illicit meeting gone wrong, or perhaps something more sinister? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you've been intrigued by Ellen's story, don't forget to subscribe and join me next time as we uncover more fates, phenomena, and the unexplained.